Welcome to End of Block Podcast. I'm your host, Sterling McKinley. Our podcast celebrates successful minority entrepreneurs here in the DMV. We share their inspiring true stories, provide insights, and tips on building a profitable business that stays on the block. Today, we have an amazing guest. We're speaking with Anthony Johnson, a certified sports player agent with the National Basketball Player Association and the International Basketball Federation. He's also the founder of a full-service sports agency group called Renaissance Sports Group. Anthony, welcome to In the Black.
Oh man, thank you again for having me. I appreciate it. Just to be considered, man. Excited to
Great.
join.
Thanks for being here. So let's start out. What made you want to found Renaissance Sport Agency Group? What drew you to this?
I'm saying, man, I started out as a participant in sports. I was an athlete.
Okay.
Played football. Had some interest to play collegiately.
Right.
But I knew very early on in the process that I wasn't going to the league. I wanted to stay in that space, but
Right.
explore other opportunities.
Okay.
So I had looked into, just trying to put myself in a position to, be a CEO or an executive of a sports company, and also came across the agent pursuit of pathway. So
Right.
while I was in college, man, I interned with sports agencies. I worked with my university. I went to University of Maryland for undergrads. I worked with the sports
Okay.
marketing program. Worked
Right.
with some small businesses in that sports sphere,
Mm-hmm.
and just was just grinding for quite some time. To eventually, after getting my master's, I had just got certified in it.
Right.
I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I knew initially out the gate that I wanted to be start my own, I would say.
Right.
I wanted to kind of learn, grow, and just figure out how I could present value to
Right.
clients initially going into it. So
Mhm.
for that first year, I was just learning and networking and building, and a lot of opportunities that come my way.
So tell me, what are some of the biggest challenges facing athletes today, and how does Renaissance Sports Group help them overcome those challenges?
I think depending on where you are in the process, I
Right.
think that answer varies.
Let's say
But
let's
I
say
would
a
say,
young athlete, let's say the collegiate athlete. What are some of the challenges they face?
one, I would just say just exploring opportunities. But in the collegiate space, a lot of the common phrase is NIL.
Right.
So it's not one is just acquiring deals in the NIL
Okay.
sector, but also it's ensuring that they're not being taken advantage of.
Right.
And that's just not by the brand. Sometimes that's people in their trusted tribes and circles. Sometimes
Okay.
that's even the universities. Sometimes that's the collectives that may partner with the universities. That's not always the case, but
Right.
that has been some realities that I've seen thus far. So
Okay.
the challenges is just really like I like to say NIL is an opportunity for athletes to
Right.
learn to intern to be pros essentially.
Okay.
Right. And
I
in
like
that
that.
process,
Okay.
there's a lot of opportunities for growth and development, but there's
Right.
also opportunities for people to take advantage of you. So I would say that's the challenge. And just protecting and owning what they can.
Okay. So that in that NIL process, how does that work? Do the brands or companies reach out to the athletes, or do they need somebody like yourself to represent them in that process?
So I would say NIL is still relatively new. It's about a little over 2 years
Right.
since its inception. Since they started to execute it.
Okay.
What I will say is that there's a lot of variance in how deals are curated. So
Right.
there are instances in which brands are directly, contacting athletes.
Okay.
And typically speaking, those are the higher top one percenters, let's just say.
Right. Right.
But there are also instances in which, individuals like myself are going to,
Okay.
get these athletes opportunities
Right.
or partnering with, their NIL marketplaces that they're working with.
Right.
That we are like either helping to usher those deals or supporting the execution of those deals or overseeing some of those opportunities that
Right.
come their way.
Okay.
So it's a lot of different ways to, to kind of
Mhm.
go at it. But the gist of it is also, doing like that grind of so far as the agency and knocking on some doors,
Right.
cold emailing if we don't have some of those
Okay.
relationships. And just really just like doing that grassroots marketing, essentially.
Okay. All right. All right. Great. Okay. So let me ask you this: what is the process for you recruiting new athletes? What are you looking for in an athlete? Say, you know what, that's an athlete that would be a good fit for our agency.
I think when it comes to NIL first, I'll start with NIL, then I'll talk about pro.
Okay.
Um, on the NIL sector, I think there are other things that go into an evaluation on how a brand perceives an athlete.
Right.
It's not just contingent on, because NIL shouldn't be contingent on like, are they a top draft pick or whatever the case may be.
Right.
That's something that definitely goes into the decision making as far as their ability to perform on the field or court. But ultimately, it's also what ability do they have, or what social capital do they have?
Right.
How are they, how many followers they have, right? How much engagement are they getting? Do they
Right.
have the capacity of showing that they can actively story tell in that social world? Or is that an
Right.
opportunity for you to kind of take that bull by the horns and help them with that
Mhm.
process and that journey? So those are things that we factor in, not only their ability to perform, not only their social capital, but also who they are as an individual. And making sure the expectations matches, right? A lot of times people
Right.
have expectations of like, I want a six-figure deal and you got
Mhm.
1,000 followers, right?
Right.
And you're getting minimal engagement. So
Right.
making sure I guess the expectations match and the character of the athlete, you've been
Right.
fortunate enough to engage with a lot of high character individuals. And that's made our process somewhat easier. But character matters a lot for us as well, just from NIL. So those are just some of the things that go into the melting pot for us. Now,
Right.
when it comes to a pro scout recruit, we're looking at, their grades, like how they're projected as far as their draft grades, to obviously what their upside or potential may be, their measurables, and then ultimately their character or their will or their love for the game, whether it's football
Right.
or basketball.
Okay. Great. Okay. So going back to social media, what are some of the things that a young athlete that's in like high school can start doing? What are some of the things they can do on social media to show themselves and be better at storytelling?
Well, I think step one, I would say to when I talk to people is one, just owning what you can, just
Right.
on the initial social sphere. So creating or designing, if you're trying to build your brand, what are some of those foundational things? If you want a logo, make sure you own that logo.
Right.
Make sure you own your own domain in the digital space, et cetera, et
Okay.
cetera.
Right.
But no, not just aligning with social, just some small things I would advise. Just try to get things in alignment across the board. So try to have universally the same username when it comes to Twitter or
Right.
X and Threads and IG. So it just when you're given those opportunities to share, you
Right.
can universally put it out there. So that's just ease of use, I would say. That's what we just start with.
Right.
But then
Okay.
on our end, man, I think you want to peel back the other layers of the onion to just better understand who it actually is, what they're
Right.
trying to convey, and whom they're trying to partner with.
Okay.
And we do that by just like not exploratory questions or questionnaires that we have for our
Hmm.
clients to better understand them. And then from there, I feel like you can more effectively determine the direction that you want to tell a story.
Right.
Because a lot of times, athletes will just solely have 10 pictures on their IG profile and they're all
Right.
basketball, all
Yeah.
highlights or something along
Right.
those lines. And as a result, it's hard for a brand to see who you are behind that, to determine where there's points of connectivity for them.
Right.
Now, yes, if you are Nike or some type of, Puma, et cetera, who wants to just step into that athlete, already into that sneaker or athleisure space, then that makes sense. But a lot of
Right.
deals are made outside of just the sports apparel brands. So when you're trying to connect with them, how do you do it? And part of that is understanding first who they are, whom they are, so we can just determine like the foundational stuff outside of what I mentioned and
Right.
just only, your space in some capacity.
Right. Okay. All right. I mean, if I hear you, there's one word that's ringing in my head is a business. So even though you're an
Oh yeah, for
athlete, you
sure.
still have to treat like a business. And hearing you talk something about influencers, about marketing, storytelling. So it really is a business. So I know your agency is a full service agency. So really break that down. It's more than just representing athletes, but what is the full scope of your agency?
So yeah, a lot of times when people hear agencies, they think contract negotiation.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
that's the major,
Okay.
a good lion's share of the work that you do.
Right.
But there's so much more, especially because the word agent and manager has started to be blended more over
Right.
time.
Hmm.
And as a result, you can support your app. We try to support our athletes in a multitude of different ways, whether that's just like athletic stuff to personal stuff. So
Right.
even it's a matter of about athletes have, let's just say, a cause they want to champion, a camp that they want to put on, to a charity event that they're trying to curate. We're supporting them in that capacity. But when there
Okay.
are also things as far as like talked about social media, what we try to do is just educate our clients and just understand the social as just understanding it's a tool or toy. We like to promote them to understand how they can use it more effectively as a tool, and just support them in that aspect. So depending on what their appetite is, If they want us to help them with content creation, then we can
Right.
support them in that lens. But a lot of times they feel like they know TikTok better than we do anyway.
Hmm.
So
Right. Right. Right.
we stay hands off, right? But then there are just other things, just as far as just other aspects of their life that we're just always supporting them in,
Right.
um, to just like business operational stuff.
Right. Okay. Great. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You realized that I don't know when high school made me that sports wasn't going to be your thing. When things not on the field on the court, I think that's very important because I had that moment too. I was in 10th grade. I looked around. I said, "I'm not grown no more. That's probably not going to work out for me. Let's go to college and study business." So but I think a lot of people get trapped in that. They think of sports and just think about on the field, but there's so many things happening behind the scenes. So talk about that. Talk about all the different roles and all different areas that an athlete can take. Besides just being sports, but being more, on the management side.
Well, man, I think is the beauty in sports is that there are a lot of different ways or
Right.
professions, a lot of different ways you can go pro in the business of
Hmm.
sport beyond being a professional athlete.
Right.
At least when I was coming up, you didn't see that as much as you see nowadays.
Yeah.
People in the front offices and things of that nature. But I'll tell you something that was very interesting, man. So I went to the University of Maryland.
Right.
And at this juncture, University of Maryland did not have a sports management degree program.
Oh wow. Okay.
But while I was at UMD, I had to do this program called individual studies in which you create your own major for
Okay.
undergraduate, right?
Right.
So I had to present and propose sports management as a program. I had to create my own
Oh wow.
curriculum and
Okay.
do all these things, and they made me actually do a thesis, right? So in doing my thesis, man, I looked at it was basically like the disparities of people of color in spaces of like management and leadership
Right.
in the business of sports. And it used to be this thing, and I think it still comes out called the recent gender report card.
Right.
And it really gave me insight into that back then, I'm aging myself, the disparities of people of color in leadership roles.
Hmm.
So that report card gave me a lot of insight into one, there aren't as many of us, there's not as much representation in those spaces or
Right.
places, but there's an ample amount of opportunity, right? So
Okay.
that lit a fire within me is even more. I already knew I wanted to be an agent there, but it's like,
Right.
oh, I definitely I gotta change
Yeah.
and promote that narrative. But what I will say to your question is that, man, nowadays you see black journalists, and they're being the most recognized influencers in these spaces. You
Right.
see black agents, like the Rich Pauls, or myself, the Rich Pauls, Nicole Lenz, and all of these other, major agents who are kind of making, moving and shaking. You see black GMs, you see black presidents of the university. I
Right.
mean, of not only colleges and universities, but also professional franchises, right?
Hmm.
So the tide is changing, I would say, in some
Right.
capacity, and there's a lot of different opportunities. Um, and there you can bounce around a little bit. I would just advise for anyone who's kind of interested to get into that space, is just like get in and do the work. I feel like success rewards those that do.
Okay.
And find where your niche or what fits you. In some capacity, man. But I would say when I was coming up, it wasn't a lot of agents. It was only one. I'm from Baltimore. You
Right.
my head and my accent coming through. Um, but it was only one black at that time sports
Mm.
agent that I knew about in the city. At least as far as basketball. So that was the only inkling of representation that I would have seen coming up. But now I feel like nowadays you can see it's a lot more attainable. You have social media,
Mhm.
YouTube, and so many different ways that you can acquire knowledge and see
Right.
representation that we didn't have.
Okay, great. So on that same note, what advice would you give somebody that wants to be a sports agent? I want to get into, sports management some role. What something they can do now to start out to be on that pathway?
I would say, man, especially if you're in college, man, I would say start now. I think
Okay.
they have one, you have NIL, right?
Right.
So if you're in college right now, you're already, especially if you had a major power five or bigger institution,
Right.
you're there with athletes who have social value, social
Hmm.
capital, that you could potentially that you might already have an existing relationship with, or it might just be an opportunity for you to prove yourself because you don't have to kick in the doors of them being uncomfortable and connecting with them, right?
Right.
So I would say start now, get your pitch together, and go to one of your college athletes and present, what you could do or how you can support them. And it's much easier if you're not starting your own. It's much easier to get an internship with an agency because you got a client already. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? It's easier to say, "Hey, I got player X. I would like to work with him and get some guidance from you
Right.
guys," as opposed to just saying, "Hey,
Okay.
can you help me learn?" And I have no clients.
Okay.
That would be one thing I would say. And
Right.
then secondly, I would say, man, just educate yourself as much as you can. As I hinted earlier, there's a lot more information out there. Um, there are podcasts, there are blogs, there's sports
Hmm.
agent blogs out there. There's
Right.
a lot of agents are writing books. I mentioned Rich Paul and Nicole, and they wrote books, provided insight into the game. There's another one I think that might is called Athletes of Brands too.
Okay.
There's so many podcasts and
Hmm.
books and platforms that you could get a lot more information that wasn't
Right.
really available when I was coming up.
Okay.
And I'll reach out to people and ask them for meeting. See,
Right.
I would offer to pay for it if I was you. And they probably not gonna take your money, but just
Right.
see if you can take somebody out for a coffee date or something, and see what comes out of it. You never know who will
Right.
respond. Gotta shoot your shot.
Okay. Great. So the process of becoming a certified agent. Tell me about that process. What does it take to become certified?
Um, what I'll say is that it's pretty universal across the league.
Okay.
All the professional league across the leagues, all the
Right.
professional leagues have some degree of certification prerequisite or process. So
Right.
I'll talk about the universal language, then I'll speak more to specifics. So across all these, they're going to require you to pass some type of background check as far as your criminal record and your financial
Okay.
history. Across all these, they're going to have some academic prerequisite. Most of them require at least an undergraduate degree. Some of them
Okay.
require a master's degree. I believe the NFL at this juncture is the only league that requires you to have a master's degree. It doesn't have to be a law degree. It can be a master's in anything that you pursue. Um, Also going to provide you got to pay to play in this space. You
Right.
got to pay somewhere, but at least just to get certified, at least probably $2,000
Okay.
just starting.
Right.
Just to get a certification or that might apply to your insurance. And then you're going to have to pass some examination.
Right.
Each of these leagues have their own like collective bargaining agreements that they come to
Okay.
between the players and their players association,
Right.
and they're going to test your knowledge on those things. So generally,
Okay.
you're going to have all the leagues are going to have, I'm saying, depending on what sports, they're all going to have
Right.
some iteration of this, a background check. They're going to want you to pass an exam. You're going to have to pay some
Okay.
money.
Right.
And what was the fourth one? I forgot it. I drew. And the academic foundation.
Right.
So those are the four categorizations, and it varies by league. Different leagues require you to have a different passing score. Some of them,
Okay.
I think the NFL is like 70%. NBA might be 80% passing score, so it varies.
Right. Okay. Great. So if you're not certified, teams and other brands, they won't speak with you. How does that work? Do they make sure you're certified before they interact with you? Or is it more kind of a safeguard system?
So it's a little different when you talk. So NIL has made it. Everybody think they're agent now. Let's put say that. So when
Right.
it comes to certification, is different because if you're not
Yeah.
certified, you can't negotiate an actual
Okay.
NFL or NBA
Okay.
contract with a GM.
Right.
No GM's probably going to talk to you. They might
Right.
have a conversation with you, but your name ain't going to be signed on that contract
Right.
if your player gets an NFL or NBA contract if you're not
Okay.
certified. So let's start there. Now, when it comes to marketing endorsements and those type of things, they're not necessarily governed by the PA. So
Right.
you don't have to be certified to be a marketing agent, essentially. That's what you'll
Okay.
be, or a manager. You don't have to be
Right.
certified to do that. Now, I believe the NFL is now requiring or pushing to have you, if you want to get licensed with the league as a marketer, to
Right.
partner with them as well. But it's not to the
Okay.
same degree of like, I guess, as the NFL agent.
Right. Let me ask you this. This is more of a personal question. So you said it's from Baltimore. So take somebody like Lamar Jackson. His mother represents him. Do you recommend using family or representing for yourself? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I think family is good, man.
Yeah.
If family's gonna be willing to do the work. I feel
Right.
like ultimately you gotta respect the craft if you're gonna be investing into that family member's journey.
Right.
And my mom is gonna get certified and do
Hmm.
her due diligence to be an
Right.
expert in the craft, then I say so be it.
Right.
But if you just because you're my first cousin, and you
Right. Right.
wrote a business plan, that
Yeah.
doesn't make you qualified to handle my business, especially when it comes to
Right.
millions of dollars. I think so often, especially when it comes to us in these spaces,
Right.
we have a tendency to not value us as far as representation, especially when it
Right.
comes to service-based business. And I think we have to be more intentional about supporting each other and being more intentional about working with us in these spaces. But if you're gonna be family, you're gonna do the work and do the job, then take your time and to invest into the craft. I think
Right.
Lamar Jackson's mom, um, And I had some more context to it, but I do think she did a solid job with him. I do
Hmm.
think if I was speaking freely, I think he could do more as far as off the field. I think
Yeah.
he missed a lot of opportunities in that
Right.
aspect. For him at one point to have the top selling jersey, and be one of even though the league didn't want him to be one of the faces of the NFL, I think there are an immense amount of opportunity in marketing endorsements, and hopefully his mom can take advantage of that, or he can get
Right.
some additional support to support him in that capacity because the window
Right.
can be small. So
Yeah.
I think him having more representation can help him in that capacity. So Lamar, listen, if you need an agent, you see this interview, mine will work with you. We get formalize some partnership and we all can win, especially because we in Baltimore. That's big.
Yeah, yeah. I think you made a great point, and I think that goes past just sports. I mean, in life, in business, you need that advocate. You need that extra set of eyes, somebody that knows the ins and outs to look out for you. 'Cause like you said, you can be leaving so many opportunities on the table. So let me know, what are some of your big success stories? What's the client that you met, you worked with, they were at this level, and through working with them over time, they grew to another level. Give me one of those stories.
So I'll give you two. One just quickly, just from a family perspective, is when you
Okay.
get certified, I was able to represent one of my family members and one of my younger cousins at
Oh,
a major
awesome.
institution, and we were able to get him about 5 figures on the NIL
Oh,
deal,
wow.
right? That was a beautiful experience. I've known him since
Yeah.
he was yay high,
Right.
before he was 300 and something pounds, right? And we were able to get him a deal at Clemson, and
Okay.
get him a pretty good, paid opportunity from an NIL perspective. So that was personal and near dear to me. That was just like success story. We share the same name, last name, and bloodline. So that's a beautiful thing,
Right.
right? Um, and I might have took him to his first football combine ever.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's personal. But then I think for us, just on the football side, I'll say take it further. Now I'm an NBA agent, but again, I support both sides of our agency. But one
Right.
of the success stories that I think is valuable is that we were fortunate enough to take some guys who going in might not be the more favorable client for most agents
Right.
to bring on, which they might not have like a grade or projected to get drafted or even get an opportunity. We were able to get them opportunities. Like one of the kids, for instance, Nigel Hill, was one of my earliest stories with Renaissance. I knew Nigel since he was younger as well. And even though he was a great talent, he was very much under the radar. He was a little
Right.
bit undersized. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of teams were the checker for him as well as what they should have been. So with Nigel,
Okay.
we were able to, all those things considered, we still got him an opportunity to, we got him invited into the Commanders rookie mini camp. He got a shot. He got cut at the wrong
Okay.
time, but we still also got him an opportunity to play in the XFL. Um,
Okay.
but if you understood where he started at to where he finished, it was
Right.
just kind of like a success story, in some capacity. So I'm
Okay.
definitely proud of that Nigel moment. Because I knew him since he was in high school, maybe middle school actually. So
Oh, wow.
people that's a beautiful thing when you can see a young boy grow into a man in manhood and play a part of
Right.
them, being able to provide and feed their families, man.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay. So how do you balance balance the demands of your clients with your personal life? Every time I say you're online, you seem to be at a game. Right now, you're also weekend. So how
Mm.
do you balance the demands of your work and your clients and also your personal life?
I'm still figuring that part out. For transparency, man.
Right.
Because with more success comes more demand, and it's not like that's what we're chasing. We're
Hmm.
chasing success. But it's also me just trying to understand the success is not success in work, but it's success in having a healthy mind state and balance.
Right.
And for transparency, bro, I'm really still figuring that out right now. For
Yeah.
me right now, I'm definitely in grind mode,
Right.
and I'm kind of bull sledge ahead, because I
Hmm.
feel like you got to grind now in these years while I'm still in my 30s and my grades haven't really started to kick in too much.
Right.
Um, that I could be a little bit more on cruise control going forward. But these first 5 years of us being in business, we understand
Right.
and embrace the grind.
Hmm.
And again, once the higher the tier of the client that you get, the easier the job becomes. So for us, we're just trying to get to that higher tier of client so that the job can be easier for us down the line. And that's when I was starting to find the balance. Right now, I'm locked in on grind mode. I'm not gonna lie to you, sir.
Okay. I hear you. All right. So getting ready to close out. Two more questions. So you
Yeah.
mentioned being in grind mode, getting a bigger client is less work in a sense because they have things in motion. But if I'm a professional athlete in whatever sport, Why should I choose working with you and your agency over another agency? What is the thing that sets you
Mm.
apart that makes you different?
Well, I think that's a great question. One, I would start by saying this, at least this myself and our team. The difference is like a lot of people get into this space for I would say an opportunity.
Right.
One thing I would say for us is this is our life's work. So we grew up, as I told you before, in high school, I knew I wanted to be an agent. So this is like they're pursuing their dream of being a pro athlete. We're pursuing our dreams of being a professional sports agent and excelling at it
Right.
at a high level.
Mhm.
So one, just it's not just purely a transactional transaction for us. It's a dream pursuit and purpose.
Right.
I think that's one thing that differentiates us, and it just speaks to the tenacity that we'll have, within the space, right?
Mhm.
But secondly, man, I think people are under the premise that bigger means better,
Yeah.
and that's not
Yep.
always the case.
Right.
I think we're boutique, but we're more specialized, but we're just as equipped, if not more equipped, than some of the bigger agencies. I
Right.
would say, and I just speak to before speaking to my team, speak to myself personally, man. Like so, I have a degree. Um, I have a degree in sports management. I got an
Right.
MBA. Even got a certificate in social media management, right? So those are all key sectors of our business from an academic foundation. But I've also been fortunate enough to, man, I've built businesses.
Right.
I've been fortunate to operate and function in this space, and that's speaking from real experience,
Mhm.
not an intern or somebody who most of these bigger agencies are going to,
Right.
serve you up to. You're going to have a team, but a lot of those,
Mhm.
I don't want to call them pencil pushers, right? A lot of those people who are really going to be doing the work haven't really had real experience of doing the work or building something themselves. And I think it's a difference when you can build something or you've done or build something yourself with
Mhm.
your own hands or your own sweat equity that a lot of people in this space can't speak to. And that's just another way that'll differentiate myself and some other people on my team is that we not only we grind is we build some things and we know what really goes into that. And
Right.
as you mentioned earlier, every athlete is a brand.
Right.
Your business before you are a brand. So you want to
Yes.
work with people who actually built brands and businesses and
Right.
they've done it with real life experience. So that's also how we fit in. Um,
Right.
and once we get the money behind us, then it's really on. We ain't get that yet. But when it's talk.
Right. So Renaissance Sports Agency, is that any meaning behind that name or is this a cool name you picked? Is there any meaning behind it?
Oh man, no, it is. I try to be intentional even with the colors. You get what I'm saying? Like the
Right.
green,
Mhm.
the name. I would say we picked Renaissance before Beyonce dropped the album. So I like the Queen, but
All right.
I can't give her that credit.
Mm.
But man, at least for me, man, when you hear the word Renaissance, one of just being of black history, kind of into history, I honestly
Right.
always thought of like the Harlem Renaissance, what
Right.
that represented, what that conveyed. So for me, similar like how the Harlem Renaissance conveyed like black opulence, black excellence, and just
Right.
us collectively excelling and flourishing in the sphere of art.
Right.
Um, I wanted to create a sports renaissance in which we were collectively working together, lifting as we climb and empowering our athletes, not just on the field, but mentally in the space beyond in the business. That's what a sports renaissance looks like to us, right?
Right.
And renaissance, the term is it's a rebirth, it's a new beginning.
Okay.
So that's why part of the reason why like it's
Right.
the iteration of what a renaissance man
Mhm.
um, is is
Right.
essentially what we wanted to do is create Renaissance. We call them Renaissance athletes, in
Okay.
which you're diverse, you're well equipped in
Right.
multiple spheres. And as a result, that Renaissance athlete will curate what we want to talk about is that Renaissance movement, which I mentioned, what I was just kind of speaking to. So it's very
Awesome.
intentional, man.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you.
Great. So Anthony, once again, thank you for your time today. It was refreshing learning more about what you do and what makes your company stand out. So tell our listeners how can they find you online if they want to contact you for anything. How can people find you?
Great. I'm on LinkedIn, like most of us are. Anthony Johnson, MBA. On most social media platforms as entrepreneur, just like
Okay.
spelled like entrepreneur, but the first letter is A. Um,
Right.
and then I would say be on myself. Follow Renaissance Sports Group at
Okay.
REN Sports Group. It's pretty universal across all platforms.
Right.
So if you guys, if people want to tap in, let's build, let's do some business for sure.
Awesome. Great. Well, to our listeners, once again, thanks for tuning in and be sure to tune in next week as we interview another successful minority entrepreneur here in the DMV area. So as always, I'll leave you with a closing quote. I like to say, so remember, in today's competitive business landscape. Your business must embrace bold and disruptive strategies to sustain profitability and stay in the black.